when it comes to public campuses, then is the solution something along the lines of like saying, well, you can't have your cake and eat it too. If you want this organization where you take the taxes from everyone and you call it a public good or whatever, you can't discriminate against speech, or you allow property rights and you're able to discriminate against speech. Is it something along the lines of that?
Yeah. See, this is again where we get all kind of mixed up. Look, if an institution were genuinely private, let's just say it owned its own land, it owned its own buildings, it transacted its own business privately, it dealt with its customers or its agents or its students one-to-one and so on, it can set whatever rules it wishes. It's its house. It sets its rules. If it wants to allow all sorts of speech anywhere, anytime, great. If it wants to control it through social means, fine. If it wants to say only people who subscribe to a particular political position can speak here, that's entirely its right. Now, if it's a university, however, you might think, well, it has a right to do this if it's an entirely private institution, but it may not be the right thing to do. There's a distinction, right? Because the university, by its very nature, is an institution that sets as one of its goals the pursuit of truth. And one way of doing this is through the clash of ideas. All right, but nonetheless, even if it doesn't do the right thing, as it were, it has a right to do what it wishes. The problem is that there are almost no universities or institutions of higher learning that are private in that sense, because every single one is taking government money in one form or another. Now, if you think about the way in which you could finance higher education, and that, by the way, is like, what can I say, an issue in its own right. One way is that the government could supply funds to students, and then students could take it to whatever institution they wished. And then you would have the students engaging privately with whatever institution they wanted to deal with, and then they could go wherever they felt comfortable or uncomfortable, or whatever the case might be. But the problem is that the government is involved directly in providing finance through some kind of Mickey Mouse system of loans, which we know aren't really loans because they're never going to be paid back anyway, right? They never were, by the way. I mean, make a difference, right? It was just like a sort of deferred payment. It was a way of taxing the unfortunate barbers and hairdressers and everybody else who had to pay the taxes to fund the lifestyle of students in these institutions. But the problem is that then when you are the major supplier of funds to an institution, the institution is no longer private. You are in receipt, and therefore the fund giver can set the conditions under which it's prepared to give you those funds. And it can dictate to you that it will only give you these funds if and only if you meet certain conditions. Now you have a choice, right? You can say, no, thank you very much. I'm not prepared to meet those conditions, in which case you're going to lose all that funding. And since almost every student is in receipt of some kind of government funding or other, you're going to end up with no students. And because what has happened there is then that the government funding crowds out the private sphere. It does this. It has done this in Social Security, for example. I mean, that's another discussion we might have sometime. And therefore, you either go out of business because you simply can't compete, because the government has an infinite supply of other people's money and you don't. Okay, so you're going to lose. Or you have to accept that it can then dictate what the conditions are on which you're going to be in receipt of this money. Now, in the UK, just in the last couple of weeks, they have set up they had given one of the people in the government the responsibility for ensuring that the universities in the UK maintain free speech in the universities. I'm not sure how effective this is going to be. In fact, of course, and I'm of course deprecate the whole idea of the government getting involved in education in the first place, but leave that to one side. Given the realities of the situation, this is a slight move in the right direction. But of course, what it means is that the conditions under which government money is given to educational institutions is going to vary depending on who's in power at any particular time, right? And you know, he who pays the piper calls the tune. So whoever's giving the money determines what it is. So I mean, they're going to say Title IX means no discrimination on the grounds of sex means no discrimination on the grounds of gender identity. And now you've got to buy that or else you're going to lose all the funding. So it's problematic. And in the context in which we live, it's unresolvable. There's no way you can do it. You get a few institutions. I think the University of Chicago has come out on the right side a few times where its president has said, I'm sorry, but we're committed to free speech. And so if you don't like it, that's stuff, go somewhere else. Right. And the Vice Chancellor of Oxford, Louise Richardson, who happens to be Irish, by the way, came out a year or two ago and said the same thing, though she seems to have kind of resigned a little bit from that position.
Mhm.
Yeah. But apart from that, you're going to get, it's going to be hard. Once you take the money, once you take the king shilling, as it was said, it's very hard to go back.